Linda? This will be your mic. We'll start in just a second here. All right, it's about 7 o'clock, I think, huh? We're just about to cross on Verizon Standard Time. Ask it, Verizon Daylight Saving Time is 7 o'clock. Well, it has been 7 days that are just been really kind of a blur in some ways. Very sad, very challenging with the events of last weekend and the assassination of government leaders and leaders prone to be hit and murdered by folks just doing evil things, and that's a sad deal. And then over these last couple of days, watching the bombing and watching that whole piece with Iran, it's going to be very interesting. So we meet tonight a pretty stable, or maybe somewhat unstable, but a pretty complicated time. But we'll have a good time anyway. We'll talk to one another, learn a little bit from one another, make some presentations, meet some new people, and give you some input from the board of where we're going these days. So the first thing I'd like you to do, if you would be so kind, is to take 1 minute and say hello to the people right around you. Stand up and introduce yourself. If you don't know somebody, please do that. Thank you very much. I'm going to take this opportunity to call on the Vice President of the Board, Linda Conley, to introduce one of our very newest members.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, this evening I have the pleasure of introducing Ann Duff. I think she's been here for a whole 3 days. Is that right? Yeah. 3 days, and she was willing to come up and say hello and be introduced. So, Ann, please come up. Okay. Yes, thank you. A good 7,500 welcome. So, Ann, tell us what brought you here. Where did you move from?
Well, okay, I've known about 7,500 York for a long time, and knew a lot of people who've been here, and most of whom have passed away years ago. So it was always sort of in the back of my mind, but I never thought I would ever come here. And it kind of started with, in the early 1990s, I got hooked up with a group called Twin Cities Single Lutheran Adults, and it was all Lutheran church bodies. So I went to that, and some of them lived here. I remember, like, some personnel associated with Augsburg. So then last fall, just kind of on a lark, I thought, well, why don't I go take a public tour just for fun, see what it looks like, because I've driven by here. So then I left, and I thought to myself, well, you know, that's for older people. I should at least be 70, at least. So then I was talking to Hannah, Barb's assistant, and I said, well, I don't really like where I am, and then I don't really want to move again. And then she said, well, why wait? So I went home and kind of thought about that, and I thought, well, okay, you know. But anyway, I grew up in Red Wing, where my father owned the newspaper, and my mother grew up on a farm overlooking Lake Pepin, just in the Wisconsin side from Red Wing. So, and I started out as a lawyer. I did defense work, insurance defense work for a small firm downtown. Then I lobbied for the State Chamber of Commerce, then I went to a commercial insurance brokerage. So, and I never married and have no children, so that's it. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Welcome to Ann.
Very good. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Ann. Thank you for taking the time to come and be here. I met Ann in the lobby on Friday night. She just barely moved in, so it was really great to get to say hi to her. Our cooperative is the first senior co-op in the United States. We are members of the Senior Cooperative Foundation, which is a large group that is an umbrella group for co-ops all across the country. They have an annual event here in the Twin Cities, the Senior Housing National Assembly, and some of our board members and our staff go every year. It's an interesting community because it brings together folks from all kinds of cooperatives and senior living communities to learn from one another, to hear speakers, to have visiting with each other, learn on the informal as well as formal kind of listening, see vendors, see what's going on out there in that world. One of the things that community does is every year they give out a leadership award. They give leadership awards for people who have accomplished much in their communities and people who are exemplary leaders for senior cooperative communities. We have had many of our people here at 7500 win the leadership award. Luther Moberg, who was the guiding light behind this whole project in 2002, Barbara Murphy, our own Barbara Murphy, who has astoundingly moved and sold every one of the units in this building. She's been here that long, she's moved them all. So that's very interesting. Jeff Lanto, who was one of the former general managers here. Perry Strasman, of course, our former manager just a few years ago. And Russ Helgeson, who was one of the board chairs here have been awarded this special recognition by the Senior Cooperative. Roger Johnson and I, as members of the board and talking to the other board, have said we have candidates who could be nominated for leadership. And we've been putting our heads together now. We've been doing it for over 2 years now, and Roger spearheaded this last year. And the two of us were able to bring the documents together and propose that we nominate one of our own, our former president, George Sverdrup, to be an award winner of the Senior Cooperative community. So Roger, I want you to start us off, and he's going to read what he's written on behalf of George and his work here.
Thank you, Rich. I'm going to read to you my letter that I wrote to nominate George for this award. Dear members of the Leadership Awards Committee, it is an honor to endorse the nomination of George Sverdrup for the Senior Cooperative Housing Leadership Award. He has an unsurpassed record of service in leadership positions, ranging from chair of committees upwards to president of the board of directors of the 7500 York Cooperative. In May of 2018, he was elected to the board of directors of the 7500 York Cooperative. The members of the cooperative recognized the potential he exhibited for leadership. His first assignment on the board was to serve as the board liaison to the Membership and Marketing Committee. After serving only 1 year on the board of 7500 York Cooperative, his fellow members on the board recognized his leadership skills and elected him president of the board in 2019. He assumed the leadership role of a cooperative with over 400 residents and 335 units of housing in a 9-story building, largest senior housing cooperative in the nation. That's us. George Sverdrup immediately established the monthly open forum, which is what we have tonight, only under the name of the board report, but it was the open forum originally, to improve the transparency of the board's functions for members. He also began the needed work to restore the facade of the cooperative's building. George Sverdrup was re-elected to the 7500 York Cooperative Board of Directors in 2021. The members of the board also re-elected him to the presidency, once again reaffirming his leadership skills. During this time, he established the reserve study and achieved board approval to fund the reserve account, which was a first for the cooperative, and very important, as we have found in the subsequent years. The financial reserves increased 5-fold under his leadership. It must be pointed out that he was leading the cooperative through the troubled COVID pandemic through these years as well. The year of 2022 marked the 4th year that George Sverdrup was elected to the presidency of the 7500 York Cooperative. He supervised the $7 million plus Windows replacement project, as well as leading the board to a successful negotiation for a more advantageous mortgage to finance the Windows project. Another achievement during this time was the establishment of a standards policy for maintaining the common areas of the building. And finally, he led the board in negotiating a new contract for the management and operations of the cooperative with Ebenezer Management Services. Although George's time as president and board member has come to an end, he continues to serve in the vital role as chairman of the property committee, which oversees the maintenance and replacement of the cooperative's building components and grounds and the updating of the reserve study. When anyone examines the record of achievement of George Sverdrup, they are amazed at both his length of critical service and his leadership skills. His 6 years on the board of directors and his 5 years as president demonstrates both his commitment to the values of senior cooperative living and the recognition of his cooperative leadership skills. No one deserves to be recognized by the Senior Cooperative Foundation for their leadership more than George Sverdrup. Thank you.
Why don't you stay right up here with me? Roger did the heavy lifting on his recommendation, and they give 2 awards. One is to cite people who really are a change agent or a spark plug in their community, and that was, we could have easily nominated George for that one. Yes. But we assumed that the most important thing that was given out was the leadership award. I was able to articulate some things. What I wanted to say about George was, George provided a model for leadership for people in cooperative senior living that could be used with small co-ops, big co-ops, co-ops in the Midwest, co-ops in the East. And that was what I thought was one of the key things. After Roger listed all the stuff that he accomplished, we said this was a model for how he did it that would be helpful for other people and would serve as for other leaders. I summarized my bullet points in this way. George understood in any organization moving forward as a complex and complicated time, and it also sometimes engenders opposition. But he exhibited a willingness to listen and enter into dialogue with those who opposed newer ideas and change, and he was not afraid to move forward while bringing others along with him. He kept his focus on the long-range mission of the cooperative. It did not back away from the demanding work and the variety of challenges that arose while solving complex and current problems, as well as he focused on the future of 7500 York. His wisdom, expertise, and work ethic have resulted in an abundance of positive outcomes for 7500 York Cooperative. Recognizing the past and continued present accomplishments of his leadership, and believing that much of his leadership style could be emulated by current and future leaders of senior cooperatives, I'm honored to recommend George Sverdrup for the Senior Cooperative Housing Leadership Award. And by golly, they liked what we wrote. And they awarded George for this year the Leadership Award for the Senior Cooperative. So come on up, George. I'll tell you what we have here. Yeah, come on in the middle here. If you go down into the office, right by the hallway that goes down, there are a number of these plaques that sit down there. George received the plaque, and so we don't have his. He has his at home, I hope in his office. He put it up there. But the cooperative has a plaque. The Senior Cooperative Housing Leadership Award presented to George Sverdrup for vision, leadership, and commitment in building the foundation for the strength and success of the principles of senior cooperative housing by the Senior Cooperative Foundation, May 21, 2025. This will go up in our office and honoring him as well as others in the past as well. George, thank you for your leadership. Don't you think we should let him say a word, Roger? I think we ought to. So,
Always ready to give a word. At my acceptance speech at the convention, I mentioned that it's gratifying to have one's work acknowledged and then affirmed by an organization such as the Senior Cooperative Foundation, but also perhaps even more by the people with whom I work, that is you folks, and with the board. It's been a couple of years since I left the presidency, and there's been time for some of the dust to settle and people to figure out what maybe was done well and what maybe could have been done a little better, and yet you still nominated me for this award, so I truly appreciate that. Around the 2019 time period, it was evident to some of us that our cooperative, the way in which we operated, needed to be transformed in order to help assure a bright future for the cooperative. And we began that work together. And now, under Rich's capable leadership and our current board and the new management team here, they are continuing what we started. So finally, thanks to my dear wife, Kathleen, those 4 years, there were planned meetings, there were unplanned meetings. There were calls during the day, right, Rich?
Right.
There were calls during the evening, right, Julie? There were emails all days. There were trips planned between board meetings. Kathleen supported me and thus you through all of that while being the chair of the Furnishings Committee. So we worked on that together, didn't we? And I'd say that in some respects, that's what we're all about here. We each have a time to do our part for a certain period of time. And that's what makes cooperative living great. Thank you.
now that I've given you the award, I'm taking my coat off. It's pretty. Some of you, I noticed, came with your sweaters on. You're cold, and some of you are hot, so we'll just have to live with that, all right? Ann, I'm glad you're here tonight because you're hearing why co-ops work, what kind of leadership it takes, and what kind of passion all of us have for working in this place. I want to introduce one of our members tonight, one of our former board members, who's going to give us a slice of history and make some comments for us. Doug Palmer, I've enjoyed Doug since I've been here and have come to be a part. Doug was on the board when I was elected to the board. Doug's parents were charter members here at 7500 York. Doug served as the chair of the workshop, which is a subcommittee of RAC. He served on the 7500 board of directors, and he currently chairs the archives committee. And he keeps finding the most interesting things in the archives up there. Fascinating, and so I thank all of you who've worked to maintain the records of this place. Doug's got a story for us, so Doug, if you'll come forward and to do sharing with what you have to share with us tonight.
Before I begin, I was a board member during George's tenure, and I've always said that George was the right person at the right time, particularly during the COVID years. Those were tough years, and George, you did a wonderful job. Thank you for all of us. Committees have always been a big, big part of our life here at 7500 York. And over the years, we've had a number of committees. Some have been original committees. Some committees have changed. Some have been altered by various means. But one committee that's probably gone through the most transformation is the workshop. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about. So sit down, relax, and I'm just going to tell you a story. Well, it goes back to the year 1978. That was the year that they finally filled the people in the west side. So 7500 York was now complete. And all the new residents were in for a new adventure. They had never lived in a cooperative before. They didn't kind of know what they were getting themselves into, but they'd been told there was going to be all sorts of exciting things. And that was true. The first few years, they started many new committees that you still have today. And the committee structure was organized so there was two parts. One was a part that would keep the lights on and pay the bills and help the board. And the other committees were ones that were, I would call, culture. They were ones that were just fun. They were things like music, art, music, and so forth. One of the things they'd been promised to move into this building was that there would be hobbies. And you look at my parents' generation, and what is today hobbies was their life. They were children of the Depression. They were young adults during the war. And so many of the things which were today hobbies were lifelong skills. I know my mother talked about the fact that she made all my clothes until I was in kindergarten, because that was right before the war, and getting children's clothes was tough. And my father was always fixing something, cars at the house and so forth. So when they moved in, one of the promises was that there would be a hobby committee. And so a committee was formed, like you all can believe. It was made up of both men and women. And they got together because they were told there was going to be a new hobby room for them. The only thing they didn't tell was that the hobby room had two names. It was called the Hobby Room Workshop. Well, when the first few meetings they discovered, but it kind of broke down by men and women. The ladies were very excited to have a place where they could knit and sew and do flowers and all sorts of things. And men said, "Where are the tools? There's no tools, there's no machinery in here, there's just an empty room." And so right away there was a dichotomy as to what the workshop would be, the workshop committee. Well, the men kind of figured, well, this is not going to work. And so they started going around the building and tried to find, was there any spots open? Were there any other spots they could use? Well, luckily they found the room which, if you've been to the workshop today, was an empty storage room. It was just an empty room with one light bulb hanging in the center of the room, and that was it. And they decided, well, this will be our workshop. So I don't know who they talked into, but they decided that would be their workshop. Well, the co-op had never planned to provide any resources for either the workshop or the hobby room. And so there was no money for any kind of tools or anything. So the men went to work building a few benches out of lumber they found, and most of them found the tools and so forth that were original tools were ones from their own homes. Many of them donated saws and whatever was available, or tools, and so they moved in. And it was pretty primitive. And in fact, in the first couple of years, they went together and asked the board for some money to buy some woodworking tools. And they were turned down because that wasn't in the budget. So anyways, that was not going to deter them, so they went around and they found a number of tools. And in fact, some of the first major tools, like bandsaws and saws, they actually bought them themselves. They paid for them themselves. And so that's how the workshop first got started. And it's interesting that in those days, things were a little different in terms of men and women. In the first few years, the hobby room upstairs was strictly women's places, and the workshop was strictly for men. In fact, if you look at the sign that's hanging outside the workshop door, that's now been painted over, at the very top it said, "Men's Workshop." So this is how it kind of started. And originally, the ladies got involved with all sorts of things. I know my mother was very interested in knitting, hats and gloves and stuff for kids. And there were a number of men that had various hobbies. And when you look at that generation, of my parents' generation, what today is hobbies were their jobs. They learned how to sew. For ladies, they learned how to sew, knitting mittens and hats, and men were always fixing their cars or their houses. And so it basically boiled down to hobbies. The ladies did their hobbies, and the men, there were various hobbies. There was one gentleman that liked to do rocks, and he made all sorts of rock jewelry. And there was a couple of men that liked building children's toys for one of these workshops. So they built toys. And a couple others were carvers. And that was kind of how it worked, that the men went down to the workshop and did things that they were interested in, and the ladies were in their workshop and did whatever they liked to do. And what happened is, over years, there was never any repair. There was a couple fellows that would repair things if you asked them. And in one fellow, he would do it, but he charged personally to do it. If he fixed something for you, he charged for it. He was kind of running his own little business for a while. So that's how the workshop operated for about the first 20 years. It was strictly men's doing activities that they like to do. As I say, things like carving, building toys, rock work, and so forth. And after about 20 years, what happened is that the population changed. The men changed as far as their backgrounds. We found that more and more men had not grown up in farms. They did not have experience in working with their hands. They were not woodworkers. And so the number of men that actually had what we would say woodworking skills and backgrounds kind of started to decline. And what happened is that very slowly, in fact, in about 1980, the board of the workshop agreed that they would fix things for people. But that was the first time that actually they did any work for the residents. And so they started repairing things. And today, that's the major workshop activity. There's a few workshop members that have personal hobbies, but mostly the workshop members do repair things. And over the years, we've repaired almost everything. There's a tagline from, if you've ever seen the TV show, that one on the fellows down there in Las Vegas that run the pool, not the pool shop, but the, what do they call it? Their tagline in their program is, "We never know what's going to come through our door." And that's kind of true of the workshop. We've fixed all sorts of things. From probably one of the most bizarre things, that lady came down, one of her kids had a witch's broom that lit up and she couldn't figure out how to turn the lights on. Or another time, right now I see it, and sitting in front of the workshop is a whole toy that somebody wants us to assemble. And I don't know how many things over the years of the IKEA that we fixed. Many times people bring these IKEA projects that they buy, and I'll tell you, if you've ever worked with IKEA, it's a challenge to put those together. There's always one part that's missing, or the instructions are not real good. So today the workshop has really changed from what its original intention was, and I think it's hopefully a service that's of value to all of you. And I know the men and now the ladies that are in it have tried to help you and to provide services that would make the co-op life a lot more interesting. I guess that would kind of is my report.
Thank you, Doug.
Rich. If there's any questions, I'd be very happy to give it a try.
Any questions for Doug? You can see him afterwards.
Yep, that'd be it.
Thank you, Doug. You could have about heard the saws going off on the balcony, couldn't you, on the second floor, where if they had the shop upstairs where they thought it was going to be. If you notice on your board report tonight, I've included the back of the agenda for our board meeting, the member's guide, and also the 7500 cooperative policy for the Cultural Arts Center, the CAC. Little did she know when I asked Rianne a year and a half ago to head up redoing of all the policies, organizing them and putting them into good straits, that she would work as hard as she's done. But I want to just tell you, I want to salute her and ask her to join me in thanking her for all the work she's done on organizing and putting together and helping the board work through its policies. We are glad to say, as of this week, all the policies of the co-op and the member guide is all on the portal. So you can look at it and it's there. So Rianne, thank you. Come forward and do us a little work here.
Yes, it has been Is this on? Yes.
There we go.
It has been a fun project to work on the policies, but they're not done. What you have listed on the portal are all the policies that were in the old policy manual and a couple that we have expanded. For instance, there are now 2 policies for animals, one for no domestic animals, and then another policy for those people who do have assistive animals. So you will see that that document currently is well over 80 pages, and we are still working on it. So the policy that you have in your packet today is a brand new one that has not existed before. We've had policies for the common areas like the social room, the York dining room, and so forth, but there was not a policy for this room, which is a room that is used by all of us quite frequently. And so I just want to highlight a couple things about the CAC policy in case they might be new to you. If anybody is going to have a meeting in this room, they must go through our resident activities director, Kara Crow. She keeps the calendar for this room, and anybody who wants to use this room for anything needs to talk to her. She will confirm the dates. She will get all the information from you for what you might need for equipment, like the microphones or how you want the setup done in the room and so forth. And then the evening or afternoon of the event, if the door back there is locked, you can always go to the security desk to ask for the key to let yourself in here to get your meeting going. The room capacity here is 110 people. And that was set by the fire marshal, and that's what we're limited to, whether it's for a seating like this or for a dance. And it would be the ushers for the evening that would do a count if they thought they were going to get close to 110. And they would tell the 111th or 112th person, sorry, the room is full. So that's something that needs to be adhered to quite closely. The other thing is that the fire marshal dictated where the aisles would be. You see the white tapes that are on the floor. All chairs must be within that white tape area. And the ushers are responsible for making sure that the seating is within that area, and also that wheelchairs and walkers and so forth are not blocking aisles. So the ushers will help people who have the walkers, wheelchairs, or scooters to be in places where they're still able to have the aisles open. The 990 audio-visual equipment that we have in here is to be used only by members of the trained tech team. Nobody else should use those pieces of equipment or even enter the closet where the equipment is stored. The piano that we have up here should be moved only by people from the Music and Arts Committee or by the staff. And we keep it covered. We don't want anything wet set on that piano and so forth. We were so lucky to get that piano a few years ago, and the musical artists who've been here think we have a wonderful piano. There are other items that are stored in here. The fitness committee has items stored. That's what all those boxes are over in the corner. And so they are required to make sure those are secure and that their materials are safe. So those are the basic policies, but then you get into some rules. And rules are parts of the document that we can easily change, whereas a policy is pretty general and well set. I mentioned the first two already. The other one, number 3, is one that has been under discussion by various committees, and that is priority seating. You see the room tonight is full. Every chair is taken. We probably could have set up a few more chairs, but if every chair is taken, then it is okay to think about priority seating. And this would be up to the committees or the committee chairs or the sponsor of an event, if they anticipate that an event is going to be at maximum capacity, they have the right to limit seating, priority seating to members first, because all of the activities that occur in this room are intended for the information or entertainment of our residents. If they don't think this room is going to be full, the committee chair, the committee, or the sponsor of the event can say, okay, if somebody wants to bring a guest, they may. Sometimes our presenters will want to bring a family member with them, and so forth, but it's up to the committee to make that decision. Sometimes the issue is with a big event like bingo, where we want all the members to be able to play bingo. Maybe there's room for guests, maybe there's not, but the bingo committee would decide how they wanted to handle that. And then food and beverage. The board had a big discussion on this, and the decision was that food and beverage would be allowed in the CAC. But again, it's up to the committee chair, or the sponsor of the event to decide if they want to say no food, no beverage, because that committee is responsible for the cleanup of anything that might get spilled, or popcorn. If the big screen committee says, yeah, bring your popcorn, well, if it ends up on the floor, they have to sweep it up. So they may say no. Now, the caveat to that is with alcoholic beverages. You know that 7500 York has no liquor license. We do not have a liquor license, which is why the dining room does not serve alcoholic beverages. No committee, no sponsor of an event, no committee chair can purchase alcoholic beverages to bring to an event. However, you individuals, if you want to bring your box of wine or your alcoholic drinks, and many of you bring wine to the dining room, that's perfectly fine. If you come to a dance and you want to bring your own wine, that's perfectly fine. But no committee.
No funds.
Go
No
ahead.
funds of the co-op.
No funds of the co-op, that's a good way to put it,
Yep.
can be used to buy alcohol, okay? And then whatever committee has tables set up, if they have easels, I think of our wonderful displays during Ethnic Week when we have everything up. The committee's in charge of taking all that down, wrapping up the paper tablecloths and so forth, because our housekeeping staff will merely move the tables and chairs and put those things back. But committees are responsible for the takedown of whatever they have. And then artworks on the walls here, under the current standards, can be determined by the Music and Arts Committee. And then when there is a special event, especially sometimes when we have guest speakers or musicians, it's up to the committee to let us know if there should not be any picture taking or recording. Sometimes we cannot record artists because of various limitations. So that's one of the new policies that's been added. We'll have several more new policies that we're working on to add that currently don't exist. Now, it's been my pleasure as a board member for the last 2 years to serve as the liaison to the Food Service Committee. I'm switching topics. And that was great fun. I've been switched over to the Marketing and Membership Committee, which I'm looking forward to. But I have one last announcement from the Food Committee. And that's also from me, is thank you so much for your increased participation in the dining room, because the dining room has just gone into the black the last several months, and that is such a change from 2 years ago when we were in the red most of the time. So thank you for that. There is a new service available for the dining room, and the Food Committee wasn't sure that you were aware of it yet. And that is that if you are returning from rehab, from surgery, if you get COVID, and you find it difficult to leave your apartment, you can call down to the dining room and order a meal delivered to your unit. The staff in the dining room would deliver it between 4 and 4:30, but there is a $5 charge. Now, that $5 is for however many meals are brought up to your unit. So if you want to order dinner and then you want a soup and sandwich for the next day, you can order that at the same time. And so we hope that when you find it difficult to get to the dining room, that you would consider that service. You can use it consecutively for 2 weeks, otherwise sporadically as needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rand. Yes, Rand, the lawyers at the Senior Cooperative Conference put the fear of God into all cooperatives. No monies from the cooperative can buy alcohol, none. I mean, that's really important. We used to do that here, but we can't do that. That's a major liability issue. And that's, of course, one of the board's key things to protect the community. So if you want to bring your wine to dinner, that's great, but you can't do it with co-op funds. So on the back side of the front page of your handout tonight is the cover of the Member Guide to Cooperative Living. A year ago, a good group, plus some of our staff from the office, reworked the current or the older version, and we adopted a revised edition on August the 28th, 2024. We realized last time I made a mistake. If you want a copy of this, a hard copy, you can go down to the office and ask for one. But now it's on the portal, so you can go right to the portal under the documents of the co-op and you can read it right there. It is a well-done piece of work. It covers almost every kind of issue that you want to ask about here at the co-op, and this will be a good resource for you as you're starting to be brand new. The beauty of it, at the end, there's 2 or 3 pages of a quick reference into where to go and to find things like that. So I want to just encourage you to take a look at that. I want to make some comments about that. First of all, in relation to driving around here. I think one of the key places where we struggle the most is coming in and out of the garage. And people drive. First of all, let me just remind all of us, it's 5 miles an hour, and it means 5 miles an hour. I walk around a lot of times oddball day and night, and I watch and listen. People go a lot faster than 5. My wife accuses me of, I back off. I get to 7 and I try to back off. It takes forever. I hate it, but do it anyway. And we want to be safe. We had an accident here a while ago, and we want to be safe down in that garage. The other thing is coming in and out. It is confusing. Remember, the people leaving the building have the right of way. If you're coming in, from the outside and you see that door going up, you know right away somebody's coming out. Get over as far to the right as you can to let people come out of the parking garage. And if somebody pulls up behind you and honks on their horn, do not give them the one-fingered salute. But you can call the president. I'll go talk to him. People don't do that. Don't pull up behind somebody because you think you're in a hurry, that you're trying to make people go and do something they shouldn't do and toot their horn at them. Here's just a thought. It's easy when you're leaving when there's nobody else out there, right? Here's what I do. I go out the west side most of the time, but sometimes I go out the south door. When I pull out, I stay out to the right as far as I can just before the sidewalk starts, and I stop and I watch to see if the garage door will go down. I notice very few people do that. People just, out they go. The point is, we're protecting this property. We're protecting our neighbors. So when you get out there, pull off to the right at the highest point, so if somebody comes behind you and acts like a foolish driver, you're not in the way, and just wait till that door comes down. That's really helpful, and it's important to do that. The other thing that's such a pain, and I don't like it, but I try to do it every time, is when somebody goes through, I stop and I wait till the door to start coming down, and then I click it and it goes back up. We can avoid damage to the doors, and we can avoid damage to each other's property if we be careful about those things. Now, sometimes it's complicated. If I'm coming out or going in and there's somebody coming out, then I don't have to wait as long because I know that person hopefully will wait at the top to look. Over on the south garage, you can pull way over to the right, go up high on the grade there and pull over and watch to see if that door comes down. You're doing a good favor for the co-op and watching out. So be careful about that. Over here on the southeast corner of the building, that's the corner, kitty corner to the dental office over there. You know, that there's a driveway right there. People come out. It's the first driveway, and people come out. And here's what happened the other day. Apparently, when you're going left out to, it's not a problem. But when you're turning right to go over to Centennial Lakes, people are cutting across the sidewalk and driving on the grass. Someone drove and wiped out the sprinkler head. Cost $300 to fix it. I haven't heard the whole story if that person is going to pay for it or not, or we know who did it. But what you got to be careful of is when you come out, you don't cut corners. Now I noticed Mitch said, here's what the guys did, and they put a big hunk of concrete right in front of that sprinkler. So if you come out and you cut the corner too far, you're going to wipe out your building or your car. So don't do that. We'll have to figure out, we may have to have a nice rock there so we can protect our sprinkler head. But when people do stuff like that, $300 it costs. You know, it's just something to be aware of. So it's important to be careful as you're coming or going. I started to think about this when I read a report the other day, and I made a copy for myself, and I've been reviewing it. Here we go. There's an article on the web entitled, "Most People Obey Arbitrary Rules Even when it's not in their best interest to do so." Now, isn't that interesting? Most people follow the rules even when it's not in their best interest to do so. Contrary to the popular saying, rules are not meant to be broken, as they are foundational to society and exist to uphold safety, fairness, and order in the face of chaos. The collective benefits of rule following are well established, but individual incentives are often unclear, yet people still comply. Researchers are trying to find out why. Rules are often described as the grammar of our society. They're embedded in nearly every aspect of human social life, personal, professional, and political, in written, spoken, or unspoken forms. The threat of punishment or social ostracism might be able to get some people to obey the rules, but studies have shown that people often follow the rules even when there's no consequence or no incentives to do so. That's a good thing, isn't it? People follow the rules even when there's nothing in it for them, because what's in it for them is the greater good of everybody. Paying attention to what does that. I thought this was interesting. Researchers observed that they're doing all kinds of experiments on why people follow the rules when it simply costs them something. They do it, about 55 to 70% of people follow the rules pretty much all the time. So all you 30%ers out there, we got to help you follow those rules. And it's really important. The safety and the community, I found that very interesting. And that's why I put that down, and I wanted to share that with you. We got to watch that garage. That is a key area. And thank you, George. I knew something went flying down here. Thank you very much. All right. Some comments. Right on the cover of your handout tonight is the board agenda for Wednesday. We're coming up to the end of the month, and the annual monthly board meeting will be Wednesday. Now, I was early this week because in May it was Memorial Day and we had the annual meeting, so we didn't have a members' night that night. And we have 5 Sundays in June, and I thought that last Sunday people are going to be getting ready to head out for the 4th of July, some of you who are coming and going. So we had this meeting tonight. So we're giving you a little preview of what we're going to look at. One of the things that our administrative folks, our general manager is trying to teach and coach the board and setting ways we start to think is when there's major renovations that go on in our units, the board needs to act on them and authorize them. We smiled the other day. Our board went over to Ebenezer. Every summer after the elections at annual meetings, Ebenezer puts on a great whole day long orientation for board members. And they talk about just good board practices and how things work and what to be aware of and who to talk with and this kind of stuff. And they talk about that's one of the board's responsibility. What happens in our building, the board has to kind of watch out for that. We even saw some of the smaller co-ops, when somebody wanted to move an electrical outlet, they had to take it to the board of directors. And I thought, oh my God, we don't want to do that, you know. But when there's big stuff, and you see on the consent to action, there's going to be a retile and tower a tub to shower conversion in one of our bathrooms. We know that our tile stuff in our restrooms and our units is going to be one of the key things we've got to manage over the next few years. This is a major project. The member is going to pay for it, but the board needs to approve that. So we have done that. We can do this under a consent to action, which we do it by email. And then when we get to the board meeting, we ratify what we've done by email. Mitch is trying to teach the board that we're responsible for what goes on and that people just can't do nilly-willy in the community because this is the community's property, not our property, it's the community's. We rent our own property. The bathrooms are going to be a key issue, and we know that's the case. The other thing I found so interesting is when we did the blowout of the heating and cooling units and changed the filters, we only had, and Mitch said at the managers meeting, one half-filled, what do you call it? The condensation pipe, only one, which is a result of just really good maintenance that we started to do. We put it on maintenance schedules. That's what our electronic stuff and our communications things and our tech stuff is helping us to do. We're starting to save money by doing good maintenance. So I just want to call that to your attention. There's a proposal coming from the property committee to talk about camera surveillance, new security cameras. Our stuff is old and it doesn't cover the building very well. And so we're going to look at a proposal and discuss the proposal from the property committee to improve security at 7500 York by upgrading the camera surveillance system through, number one, replacing 9 old and outdated cameras, which we can't get parts for anymore, adding 6 new cameras outside for better coverage of the whole property so we can monitor the parking areas and other parts of the outside property, and installing another camera in the lobby for extra safety in the security area down there. It's become obvious that we need to be far more vigilant and pay much more attention to what we're doing. So that's coming to the committee or to the board on Wednesday. We're looking at a potential bid of a little over $28,000. We've got $18,000 of it in the reserves. So we'll have to, if we approve that, we'll have to figure out how to pay for the rest of that. That's a big project, but in one sense, it isn't such a big project considering the technology we're going to buy. It's getting better and better for less and less money all the time. So that's a big issue that we'll take up at the board meeting on Wednesday. You heard Mitch if you came to the managers meeting on Wednesday afternoon. We continue to work on the waterproofing project. Isn't it great that the screen and the plastic is down in the dining room? I keep thinking, oh gosh, it's nice to see the sunshine in there, isn't it again? And to see things coming. And I notice they're working like mad. They're getting ready to pour more concrete. They've been setting forms. They're working on, the other thing they're working on is around the edges where there are large doors for patios and in the office area. There's a gap that comes when people walk out of there. They can go down about 5 inches or so. The city of Edina is mandating that when we finish now that we're going to finish our project, we have to build a ramp coming out of each of those areas so that no one will fall or be injured if they come in a hurry or an emergency out of that. And it makes sense. But that's coming up, and I noticed the guys have been out there working on that lately. One of the key issues we're finding, of course, as Mitch reminded us, is over on the east side, the south wall, or the north wall, heading north. We found water intrusion coming through some of those. You've seen the holes up and down the stack. And we're looking at getting our engineer to get the documents prepared to go out for bid with our masonry companies to take a look at how we can fix that. Now, here's the big issue. Prudence tells us, and the property committee's on the ball here, along with management, is they've authorized that we're going to work on what we call a rough order of magnitude to look at the whole building. We need to take a real hard look and see what we've got going in our facade. It's not the building that we have problems with, it's the brick that's not set right, and it's getting old and it's leaking. So we have to take a good hard look at that. What we're going to find, I have no idea. But I think it makes sense to start looking and getting ourselves prepared to see what's out there. We need to maintain this building for 30 to 50 more years, so it will be interesting to see what happens. So stay tuned for that. The executive committee made a motion, and we're sending it to the board. They put us in charge of thinking about how we're going to use the former Stop and Shop area, so we've proposed that the management company come in and as soon as they can to gut the old Stop and Shop, maybe leave the sink over there with the water on, and then to get it ready for down the road when we start to plan for this summer and fall for what can go in there for next year. We don't have any money in the budget to do anything right now, so we have to, if we're going to do something, we got to put it into the budget process that's coming up now, that's just getting started. So if you see people banging around in there, I'm assuming the board will approve that, and we're going to gut it and just see where we're at. There's been all kinds of interesting things that we've talked about. So no idea is off the table. If you got a brilliant idea, the one we probably won't think, one nice lady said, oh, good, a malted milk shop. I said, nah, we're probably not going down that road. That's a good idea, but I could even go for that. But we're probably not going down that road. So if you got an idea, we've been thinking about all kinds of things. That is not finalized, and we'll look at that as we go through the rest of the summer and on into the fall. The board has brought on with a very minor contract, a food service consultant, and we've been working with a small group on the board, plus a week or so ago we worked with another interest group. We're trying to figure out where we're going. We've got 2 years now before our 2-year contract with Morrison Services comes to an end. We've got to figure out, and Mitch keeps reminding us, and I think this is really correct. It's not so much what we want, is what are we willing to use and what are we willing to pay for. That becomes the key issue. It is our biggest amenity, it is our most costly amenity, and we have to continue to figure out what will work in the long run. We like our company. Morrison has done really well for us over these last years. We had a consultant because we want somebody who talks restaurant language, knows restaurant stuff better than the board members do, to be our eyes and ears as we work together on figuring out where we're going. So we've managed a small contract of $4,000 to work with our consultant. And he's a restaurant guy, been in the hospitality industry for a long time. And unlike somebody who just comes and gives us a lot of la-di-da, he knows the numbers and he crunches them well. And we've been starting to listen and do some listening posts. So we're working on that. As I said to you earlier last week, the board attended the annual board orientation provided by Ebenezer for community members. They'll do 3 of these events. They manage now almost 60 cooperatives across the United States. And we are, of course, the oldest and the first company they've started it. The Ebenezer people were the folks who got this started, turned it over to the members, and they've been our management company ever since. So we appreciate the the teaching things are really well done, and we like them a lot. All right, that's all I got. I put the board agenda out on the bulletin board. You can see where we're going, but you've got a copy of it here tonight. Questions or comments before we go home? Hearing none, we're adjourned.